Midsommar is a 2019 folk horror film written and directed by Ari Aster. The film stars Florence, Pugh and Jack Reynor as a dysfunctional couple who travel to Sweden with a group of friends for the Midsummer festival, only to find themselves in the clutches of a sinister cult practicing Scandinavian paganism. Supporting actors include William Jackson Harper, Vilhelm Blomgren, Ellora Torchia, Archie, Madekwe and Poulter. A co-production between the United States and Sweden, the film was initially pitched to Aster as a straightforward slasher film set among Swedish cultists. While elements of the original concept remain in the final product, the film plot centers on a deteriorating relationship inspired by a difficult breakup, which Aster had himself experienced. The soundtrack, composed by British electronic musician Bobby Kralik, better known as the Haxon Cloak, takes inspiration from Nordic folk music. The film was shot on location in Budapest in the summer and autumn of 2018. Midsommar was theatrically released in the United States on July 3, 2019 by A24 and in Sweden on July 10, 2019 by Nordisk Film. The film grossed $48 million and received positive reviews with praise for Aster's direction, Pugh's performance in particular, although it's polarized general audiences. The cast includes Florence Pugh as Danny Aldo, an American psychology student who's left deeply traumatized after her sister commits a murder-suicide by filling the house with carbon monoxide, killing herself and their parents. Jack Reynor as Christian, Danny's boyfriend, who studies cultural anthropology, and whose relationship with Danny has become increasingly distant over the last 4 years. Poulter as Mark, one of Christian's good friends. William Jackson Harper as Josh, another one of Christian's friends. Vilhelm Blomgren as Pell, a friend of Christian's who's invited him, Mark and Josh to attend a midsummer festival in his ancestral commune in Hagra in rural Hälsingland in Sweden. In May of 2018, it was announced that Ari Aster would write and direct the film, with Lars Knudsen serving as producer. Be Real Films, a Swedish company, produced the film alongside Square Peg, with A24 distributing. Aster's previous horror film, Hereditary, had been a huge critical success, making over $80 million to become A24's highest-grossing film worldwide. According to Aster, he had been approached by Be Real executives to helm a slasher film set in Sweden, an idea which he initially rejected as he felt he had no way into the story. Aster ultimately devised a plot in which two central characters are experiencing relationship tensions verging on a breakup, and wrote the surrounding screenplay around this theme. He described the result as a breakup movie dressed in the clothes of a folk horror film. Aster mentioned the 1981 Albert Brooks film Modern Romance as an inspiration for Midsommar, and also called it The Wizard of Oz for perverts. Aster worked with the film's production designer Henrik Svensson to develop the film's folklore elements and the traditions of Haga while visiting Hälsingland together. He researched Hälsingland's centuries-old farms that typically had paintings on the walls to develop a stylized version for the set, as well as midsummer celebrations in Swedish, German and English folklore. Aster also researched spiritual movements and communities, saying he particularly drew inspiration from Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy and theosophy movements. The majority of the film was shot in Hungary rather than Sweden, primarily due to financial constraints, but also as Sweden limits daily film shoots to no longer than 8 hours. The shoot proved arduous due to the heat. Wasps were highly abundant and a major issue on set. Pugh even reflected the shoot was totally nuts and commended Aster's direction, saying he was dealing with possibly 120 people, additional extras and actors there, all speaking in 3 different languages. He was the captain of the ship. Ahead of filming the drug-use scenes, Reynor and the cast discussed their own experiences with psychedelic mushrooms. On a breakdown scene with Haga, Pugh commended the other woman involved, saying they made these scenes possible, as she typically struggles to cry on camera. She reflected, "I knew I'd never be so open and so raw and so exhausted like I was on that day ever again." The sex scene between Christian and Maya was filmed also on the final day. Reynor said he spent the time attempting to boost morale among the other cast members involved, none of whom spoke English, including Isabel Grill, who played Maya, who was appearing in her first feature film role. He reflected the male nudity was unusual for horror film, where female nudity is more typical. He said that he advocated for much more full frontal nudity as possible. "I really wanted to embrace the feeling of being exposed and the humiliation of this character. I felt really vulnerable, more than I had actually even anticipated." The film's central sex scene between Christian and Maya has been the subject of debate as whether it depicts rape. An article on Sexuality and Culture asserts that the ambiguous nature of the scene may be viewed as problematic because it blurs the lines between consent and sexual assault, and that the film implications for contemporary understandings of rape, particularly of males. Yasuki Narita, a Japanese professor at Yale University, positively cited a scene in the film where an elderly person is forced to jump off a cliff. Narita used this example of mass suicide or mass seppuku, which he claimed was the only way to solve the aging crisis in Japan. The comments resulted in a major controversy, but also resulted in Narita becoming a popular figure among some young Japanese people. Now, where do you start reviewing a film like Midsommar? Firstly, the film is visually stunning, with breathtaking shots of Swedish countryside and the festival itself. The use of bright, vibrant colours and the constant daylight of the midnight sun creates a sense of both wonder and unease as the audience is constantly reminded of the sinister undertones of the festivities. The acting is absolutely exceptional, particularly here from Florence Pugh, who portrays Danny with a raw emotion and vulnerability. The supporting cast, including Jack Reynor, William Jackson Harper, Poulter, and Vilhelm Blomgren, also deliver strong performances, capturing the complexities of their characters as they navigate the increasingly dangerous situation that they find themselves in. One of the film's greatest strengths is its ability to build tension and suspense, slowly revealing the true nature of the festival and the village's intentions. As the group becomes more isolated and the situation becomes more perilous, the audience is left on the edge of their seat, waiting to see exactly what horrors will be unleashed next. I found the film explores themes of grief, trauma, and the destructive nature of the codependent relationships. Danny's emotional journey throughout the film is both heartbreaking and cathartic, as she confronts the pain of her past and finds strength to stand up for herself, and in some strange way is almost welcomed into a new family at the end of the film. The film definitely delves into the ideas of grief, betrayal, breakups, and so much more, and plays off the competing aspects of femininity versus masculinity, modern versus old, capitalism versus communism, and tradition versus modernism. One of the standout aspects of Midsommar is the exploration of the pagan rituals and traditions. The film is deeply rooted in Swedish folklore, and the attention to detail in the costumes and set design adds to the film's authenticity. Aster also uses the film to explore themes of grief, trauma, toxic relationships, making Midsommar so much more than just a horror film. The film's pacing is deliberately slow, which may not be to everyone's taste. However, the slow build-up allows the tension to simmer before exploding into a horrifying climax. The film's use of graphic violence and disturbing imagery is not for the faint of heart, and some viewers might find it difficult to watch. For me, Midsommar is a visually stunning and thematically rich horror film. While it may not be to everyone's taste, those who enjoy slow-burning horror films with a deep psychological and cultural exploration will find there's a lot to appreciate here and take from this film. It's certainly not one of those films that you will ever forget. Midsommar gets a 9 out of 10.